So when we talked about the types of English sentences, we mentioned the simple sentence, which is just one independent clause all by itself with complete meaning. And the second type was the compound sentence, which is actually putting together two or more independent clauses, standing at the same level of importance in the meaning of the message. And we see several ways how to put independent clauses together to make what we call a compound sentence. But today, we'll talk about the third and most important type of English sentence. That is called the complex sentence. What is a complex sentence? A complex sentence is assembled when you have at least one independent clause. That means there might be two or more, and at least one subordinate or dependent clause. So the most essential case would be an independent clause and a subordinate clause. So let's see a number of common subordinators in English. You may see on this list that there are several words. For example, you can see although we've introduced if also, before we've introduced that, but there are many others, and this list is not even complete. There are many more subordinators known in written English. Did you know that all these subordinators do not signal the same function that the subordinate clause will perform in the complex sentence? Actually, subordinate clauses in English will perform three different functions, as you can see here. Subordinate clauses can perform within a complex sentence as a noun, as an adjective, or as an adverb. Well, you know what a noun is. And an adjective is a modifier. That is a word or phrase that can describe some attributes or modify somehow a noun. And an adverb is mostly an expression that can modify a verb, especially an action verb or a conjugated verb. Let's see examples of complex sentences that consist of one independent clause and one subordinate clause that will perform the role of an adverbial modifier to the conjugated verb in the main clause. Let's see our first example. Our minds remain active while we are sleeping. Yeah, you can see that the subordinate clause has been underlined here. We can identify the first part in this sentence as the independent clause. Our minds, subject, remain, conjugated verb. And in the subordinate clause, we identify clearly the word while preceding we, the subject of the second clause. But this while actually indicates that the whole structure, while we're sleeping, is working as a kind of adverbial modifier. That is, an adverb indicating some characteristic of the word remain, the conjugated verb. In this case, this expression, this subordinate clause, tells us when that action, the action of remain, is being done, right? So you can say that it is an adverbial modifier of time, actually. Let's see a second example. As the Yellowstone River moves eastward, it picks up the waters of three other rivers. Now we can identify two clauses here. The non-underlined portion is our independent clause, but the underlined portion is our subordinate clause, and it starts with the word as, which is similar in meaning to while in this context. So again, we know clearly that it refers to the Yellowstone River in the second clause, and it says about it that it picks up the waters of three other rivers. You might wonder, when does this happen? The answer to that, as to the time of the action described by the verb picks up, is said in the subordinate clause. As the Yellowstone River moves eastward, that is when this Yellowstone River picks up the waters of three other rivers. So it's another example of a subordinate clause working as an adverbial modifier of time. Let's now see two different examples. A subordinate clause sometimes can work or perform as an adjective or an adjective modifier. That is, a phrase or word that can describe or modify a noun or a noun phrase. Let's see. A zoologist is a scientist who studies animals. Okay, you may see that there is a main clause. A zoologist is some kind of scientist. But instead of using perhaps one adjective such as a good scientist or such as a smart scientist, we're using here a clause. Actually, a group of words who studies animals is a subordinate clause. We can identify in this group of words who is performing as the subject of the conjugated verb studies. And this group of words, this clause, is working as an adjective for scientist. So we say this is an adjective clause, or also called relative clause. This is another possibility for subordinate clauses. They can work as adjectives for some given nouns within the sentence, within the main clause. Let's see another example. The discovery of fire, which happened about 1 million years ago, provided humans with heat for cooking and warmth. Yeah, this is quite a long sentence, but you can see that there is a main clause saying basically the discovery of fire, that is our subject, provided humans. Yeah, provided is a conjugated verb, and that's it, our main clause. But you can see that embedded within this main clause, there is this subordinate clause, which happened about 1 million years ago. How do we know it is a clause? Which is performing as a subject, and happen is a conjugated verb. So, but this structure is working as an adjective for the discovery of fire. So we say is a subordinate adjective clause. Let's see another example. Scholars have long debated how the universe began. All right. In this example of a complex sentence, we see that there is a main clause. And in this main clause, the subject and conjugated verb are scholars and have long debated. But what is it that scholars have been debating? What is the direct object of the verb debated? Actually, what follows in the underlying portion, how the universe began. So, how the universe began is also a subordinate clause. You can see the universe as subject and began as a conjugated verb of that clause. But this clause is standing as a noun, actually as a direct object for the conjugated verb in the main clause. So, we see an example of how subordinate clauses can stand as nouns within a main clause and thus within a complex sentence. Let's see another example for subordinate clauses in the role of nouns. In this next sentence, we read, what predicts life satisfaction in middle adulthood has been the subject of much research on young adults. If I ask you, what is the subject in the main clause of this sentence? Well, the subject here is all that is underlined. What predicts life satisfaction in middle adulthood? This is a subject. This is our it in the main clause. Has been is a conjugated verb in the main clause, but we understand that our subject in this main clause is not a single word, it's a whole clause. We call this a subordinate noun clause because it's acting as a subject, which is a noun. So, we see several examples of how complex sentences work in English. Now you know the 3 types of written English sentences. In a future series of videos, we'll be exploring in more detail all the variety of occurrences that complex sentences have, and also compound sentences in English. Based on the understanding of the structure of these sentences, we'll be getting ready to tackle sentence correction questions successfully. Thank you for viewing the series and see you next time.